Distinguished guests, we want to appreciate you all for coming for the last session on board development. I remember vividly well that on Monday when we had Hedem Osai, who gave us that powerful session, I knew people wanted to ask more and more questions. So we hope there will be some time to ask questions today. So without wasting too much of our time, I will invite Hedem to please go ahead with the presentation for today. Over to you, Ma.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, everyone, and thank you once again for joining today's session. Thank you for participating at the beginning of the session on Monday, and for your follow-up questions. For those of you who sent me follow-up questions, it indicates that you were very attentive and it was useful. Today, we'll go straight into the first unit planned for this, today's session, which is orientation and training. As many of you are aware, for those of you who joined us on Monday, we were able to talk about what your board represents in the life of your organization, what that organ is, why it is critical. We talked about the roles and responsibilities. We were able to, outline for you the duties of your board. Now we're moving straight into orientation and training. Now, while it is important for you as the founder to be fully aware of what your board represents for you, what you should be, leveraging from your board, it's also equally essential for you to, communicate that, for you to ensure that all members in this board have effective orientation. They are fully seized of information and knowledge of what their duties are. They are aware, and in fact, you put them in a position where they are able to effectively deliver on those roles for you. It's in your interest. So sometimes the ball doesn't stop when you just recruit them and then they sign a board acceptance letter. No, you have to move forward. You have to do the extra diligence, the extra work of training them, helping them to understand fully the ramifications of your organization. So that's what we're going to focus on in this unit. When we're talking about orientation, what do we really mean? How should we go about it? What are the steps, practical steps that you as a founder should take to make sure that all the members of your board, whether trustees, directors, whatever nomenclature you have given it, are fully oriented, on your organization's mission and objectives, whatever strategic goals you're pursuing for that period in time. So sometimes, even after you've recruited them and done orientation about the general objectives of your organization, in the life of your organization, from time to time, you devise strategic plans. Maybe for this next phase of your organization, there's a strategy or there's a specific set of goals and objectives you are targeting. You have to go back again and update the training of the board to say, in this next 5 years, the organization is pursuing the following objectives. We are pursuing, scale. We want to scale our existing programs. We are pursuing internal generated IGR, internal generated revenues. So we're looking at how the organization can be financially, resilient as opposed to just dependent on grants. And so the next 5 years are devoted to that. That means all the actions and activities of the board in terms of how they govern you, how they act in oversight, how they support you in fundraising and all those things should be centered around those strategic goals you're pursuing. So you see why it is critical that your board is aligned with you. So this is what we'll be focusing on in this unit. I'll try to move swiftly because we have, I think, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 units to cover today, and I want to give you opportunities to ask questions. Like I said, the purpose of your orientation is, okay, here we just established some of the objectives of this particular unit. We will give you examples of board training events, but essentially it's for you to have a grasp and understanding of the orientation process, help you picture it, visualize it, and you can be very creative. There are many ways that people go about orientation. Sometimes some people will take their board on a retreat somewhere and bring in an external, trainer who is very familiar with board functions and train them. Some other people will have a virtual session, maybe some virtual meetings with their board. So it's up to you, given the resources at your disposal. But most importantly, you have to know the goal. What do you want to achieve with this orientation? You can decide that you want to do it once a year. You can decide, the periodic nature and how you do it. So, but the purpose of this unit is to help you as a leader of that organization understand how you need to be carrying your board member along board members along, how you need to give them effective orientation, and what key steps you can take to achieve that. So like I said, the orientation process is essentially to prepare the board members to equally understand their duties to your organization. On Monday, we talked extensively about some of those duties. It's interesting that I meet a lot of board members who don't know the duties that they owe the organization. They just know that somebody that is in maybe their young member in their church, or a young mentee of theirs, or a young nephew of theirs, or somebody that maybe either in professional settings, their paths crossed and the person reached out to them years later and says, sir, please, or ma, please, I set up this new organization. I would like you to serve on my board. And after that, there's no further communication to them about, what is expected of them. What are the parameters around how they function? What is the scope of their functions? What should they be doing and what should they never do? Things like that. So it's important to give them that information. It's important to remind them constantly about that information so that you get the best out of your board members. So your board is not just a cosmetic unit. It's not just for show, decoration, but that they're actually contributing to the lifeline of your organization. So this is why we do orientation, so that everybody is operating from the same script. Everybody is aligned. Everybody is, that some board members don't, it will interest you if you tell them, if you ask them, please tell me about this organization. You say on the radio. Do you know that some of your board members may not even be able to effectively introduce your organization if you, the executive director or founder, is not present? That's how challenging the role is for many board members. That's how lacking in understanding some board members are about the organizations that they serve, in that capacity. So we need to sort it out. One of the what I tell people, and it's essential that all of you, the least you can do is have a formal letter, which we call, apart from the board acceptance, just, oh, dear sir, ma, you put the name and address of whatever, upon a review of, or upon a meeting of the founding members of this organization, we have deemed it, and based on your, your credentials or your profile in society, blah, 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 we would humbly like to invite you to serve on the board. Apart from that letter with all those paragraphs, you have to have, so usually I tell people, attach a terms of reference. If you have a more elaborate document, you're talking about something like a board charter. Now, so that you don't go getting confused about, oh, what's the nature of this? Should I go and hire a lawyer to develop a document for me? There are templates, there are templates online, abundant templates that can serve you as a guide. Or you can visit nonprofit archives, some archives of nonprofits and places where they curate these resources for boards. Or you yourself, you can sit down. Given these sessions we have had with you, especially on Monday, where we spelled out the different duties, you should be able to craft a basic, terms of reference that says, having accepted to join or serve on the board of this organization, here are the following duties, or here are the following expectations or obligations you will be, providing for the organization. When you write, just outline them. Oh, a duty to so, and so. A duty to attend the meetings of this organization as at when given notice. A duty to support the organization's fundraising of the organization. A duty to supervise or govern and evaluate the performance of the management, the executive director and management structure of the organization. You to list those things, itemize it, so that at a glance, your board member reading it can then look at it and say, okay, I agree. And then he appends or she appends her signature. When you put their own duties, you equally outline your own responsibilities to the board. A duty to conduct the affairs of this organization in a manner that will never bring to disrepute the, the individual or members serving on our board. A duty to perform all the objectives according to the work, the blah, 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 the founding document of the organization. A duty to, you tell them what you equally will do. A duty to act in the interest of the communities and never cause injury or harm in such a way as to, So you also tell them that joining also, we will equally protect your image, effectively drive this organization so that you are proud to associate with us. So you just spell that out in a document. Now, that is just one basic level of document you'll be sharing with your board. Where a lot of people omit to go further in terms of orientation is that they don't provide the board members with what we call a board manual. A board manual. A manual is a guide that tells you how to use a thing or how to effectively optimize the usage of a thing. Similarly, that manual is going to guide the board members on how to interact and engage with this organization throughout their service, their tenure as board members. Or for as long as this entity is existing, this is how you can, this is what we are doing, and this is the expectation of this, how the organ, this is how the board, this is what the board represents in the life of the organization. So you have a manual, the same way you have staff manuals or employee manuals. That's the way you should create a document called a board manual for your board members. So that as you recruit them, as you update your board and change members of your board, you're handing to each have it exists. At best, from time to time, depending on changes in the life of the organization, you can update the manual. Maybe you started out as a 4 staff, and then you later tell them, now we've expanded to 20 staff members. We have this number of projects. So the manual, you can update it, but the structure of the manual is fixed, and you're able to communicate everything about the life of that organization through that manual. Immediately somebody accepts to be on your board, apart from the letters and terms of reference, you equally hand over to them this manual. So that's the first step. You should be looking at how to conduct a board manual. When you create one, how do you make it attractive, reader friendly? So it's not enough to go and start, maybe some of us are in this room, in this session, that we are professors, you know how to write. Nobody's going to sit down, they didn't wake up in the morning just to read your documents. So, you must be sensitive to how reader friendly that manual is. You tell them the brief history of the organization in your manual. You tell them the mission and objectives this organization was established to pursue. You tell them, the flagship programs of this organization as an organization are carrying out in fulfillment of your theory of change. You tell them the approaches you use towards your programs. You tell them, the staff structure, basically the management structure. In the manual, you should be able to share with them the organogram. Oh, here's how we run. We are led by the executive director. These are the units. These are the structures. This is how. So they will, by the time they go through it and flip through the pages, and then you put nice, compelling images. You share with them maybe press releases, press reviews, or within the local context that you're operating in the past. So that way they're proud that, if you have any things to celebrate, you share it in the manual, milestones that the organization achieved. Oh, the organization was once awarded a so prize for this, that. Oh, the organization achieved consultative status with the United Nations, Economic Council in this year. Things like that. Let the board members see that even before coming into the life of the organization, this is how far, the organization has progressed. And so as they're coming in, the expectation is that they will lead it even further. So these are things. So this document represents a very useful companion for your board members. If they are going somewhere and it is their intention to share with their networks about the organization, they'll just quickly flip through the manual. So that's one resource tool that is essential for you to provide to your board members. As I said, you can be more creative. Apart from this board manual, that's the first, that's one level of resource and document. Have sessions, have orientation sessions. So once a year, I recommend that apart from the general meetings of your board, where they come in and act in oversight and review your policies, review your budgets, review your audited statements and all of those things, you should have an orientation for board members every year, at least once a year. Now, what we used to do in my organization, we used to have what we call board meet and greet. That board meet and greet was an opportunity for the staff to meet the different members of the board, for the board members to share, from their unique professional experiences with the staff. But as a prelude to that part of the agenda, we would first of all do an introduction again for all the participants, especially, so the board members don't even know that it is them that we are targeting. And we'll just do a whole introduction about the organization. So it's like a refresher course that happens yearly about the organization. We'll walk them through, the vicissitudes of the organization, the changes, its mission, statement, all the things we've been working on, how much progress and impact we've recorded in the community, the current strategic plan we're driving in the life of the organization. So these were initiatives that we did, but the board members felt excited to come because it was a chance, almost like a mentoring session that was, part and parcel of our calendar for them to interact with staff. And that way, staff also recognize the top organ in the organization. It's a bridge. It helps the board to feel more sense of ownership about that organization that they are attending the meeting. So it's not just a cold entity to them that they only meet with the executive director. People or different phases of staff you can use. Some people, like I said, take their board members on a retreat, depending on the level of resources that you have as an organization. Some people will take their board members on an annual retreat where they will go over all of these things. And in that orientation, apart from going over the terms of reference, workshopping them through the manual, they also review very critically the duties of the board, and they train the board on how to carry out those duties. So it's almost a form of capacity building. You're telling board members that you are expected to support us in fundraising, but board members may not necessarily have those skill sets. So from time to time, you can even bring in a technical trainer, some subject matter expert who comes to address a specific topic for the board. Oh, how to enhance fundraising, your fundraising drive in support of the activities of a nonprofit. And the person trains board members, and board members will ask different questions and say, when they go out away from that session, they feel more. Or you bring in, you have a topic where you talk about tool for growth of organizations, and your board is receiving capacity training just as you invest in your staff members. You're doing that for your board. So they enjoy the fact that every time you call them, there's something positive in it for them. So these are some examples of ways you can effectively, hold these orientation activities for your board. Some people, what they also do, leveraging modern tools and technologies, they will create short videos so that they'll just share it on WhatsApp for their board members from time to time, about Mayan and, board support. And you just share exciting, they'll bring in graphic people, storytelling experts who will come up with very exciting short videos that captivate. And in those videos, as the board member is watching it, the board member is learning about different, or being reminded again about different aspects of this organization where they are serving in, So these are different approaches, like I said, that you can apply. But very importantly, you have to develop a resource document that the board member in your absence can refer or can reference and get information about this organization. From time to time, periodically, fixed periodically now, so that it's not just at your whim and caprice, but it should be something that falls within the template of the running template of the organization, that you bring your board members for annual convenings that are strictly devoted to orientation. Whether it's a refresh, like I said, it can be tagged the capacity building activity for your board members. And in the process, you also share with them, again, you remind them about the goals of the organization and how they are expected to be supporting the pursuit of those goals. So these are effective tools you can use. So that covers orientation. So I want to hope that as we are going back to the drawing board, we're all thinking now about what's our next step in that regard. The 5 members you have on your board, the 3 members you have on your board, the 4 to 8 or 10, whatever number you have on your board. You should be thinking now about, as I return from today's session, when am I going to have that convening for them where I want to, devote it to orientation of my board members about my organization? Or do you want to call it a capacity building session for your board and you have 2 items on your agenda? One is to effectively train them on an area that, empowers them to deliver more effectively as board members. But secondly, and primarily, it is to give them an understanding of the workings of your organization and how they can how they are expected to effectively serve as members of the board. So please, I hope that that's an action point that will emerge from that unit. Now let's move immediately and swiftly to the next unit, which is governance versus management. So remember, quite a number of questions arose last week that showed a little bit of confusion around these terms. And I see it occur a lot. I remember I hinted that sometimes I go for meetings of some organizations and they'll be given as a board member, and they'll be giving me tasks that are very clearly, management related tasks. And I'll have to put my hands down, my foot down and raise my hand and say, what do you mean? So this occurs a lot with organizations that, don't understand management structures, and they're running on this association template. So they think, the way I told you the distinction between when you have boards that have standing committees and boards that typically set up ad hoc committees. Ad hoc committees occur frequently in organizations that have managed a day-to-day management structure. But maybe there is something that emerges in the life of the organization, some emerging need or some change. And so you want to really dig or leverage the unique experience of your board members. So you set up an ad hoc committee to say, please support us in addressing this issue. Come up with a report for us, or come up with a guidance note for us, or come up, that's what an ad hoc, but it doesn't therefore mean that that ad hoc committee replaces the management structure of the organization. You begin to tell them to please prepare a proposal for the organization. You are trying to apply for this. You want your board members to, they are busy individuals. Please never abuse, the commitment of your board. Don't confuse the roles, because in that confusion, what it amounts to is that you begin to require your board to perform tasks that they have no business performing. Also, it's dangerous because it creates a tendency for your board to begin to micromanage. You never want that dynamic where your board becomes a micromanaging entity, where they are constantly, breathing down your neck as executive director, asking you to send them this review document. They want to immediately review it. Every week, they're asking you to send them the payroll, report, asking you to send them, your board is not supposed to be that intrusive or that, invasive over the management of the life of the organization. There are structures around how they can act in oversight, and they must stick to that. So you yourself don't begin to give your board roles that confuses them and makes them see themselves as managers parallel to you. So that's something we need to trash out and fully understand. Now, hopefully at the end of this, you understand the difference between governance and management. And then you yourself will be able to go back and begin to look at the activities of your organization and then categorize them. Which one falls under management? Which one falls under governance? As we know, governance is typically when we're talking about oversight-related activities, oversight-related functions, or essentially helping to shape the policy, landscape, the rules, the mission and objectives. That is, the way, somebody is responsible to shape a constitution, how will we operate, the operating system, the operating code, the operating manual, that's where your board comes in. They give structure. They give, they founding board members, and you really worked with them to come up. Sometimes as founders, we were the sole founders who sat and did brainstorming introspectively. We worked by ourselves. We envisioned this document. We envisioned our organizations. We built the first teams. We recruited the first board members. So very rarely do I find instances where the founder worked with a set of core individuals to come up with the initial running template. But that's the ideal thing, like I said. When you decide that this is what you want to do and you have a vague idea of the mission and objectives you want to pursue, your most important next step is to find a core group of people who believe in this. So if you fall into that category where you worked with some founding board members to devise the blueprint of this organization, you will then understand, fully what I'm talking about. The scope of their function is to design that blueprint, but they are not supposed to handle the operational. Having designed it, they are now stepping aside. They will bring in people who handle the day-to-day operational activities of this blueprint they designed. So they're like architects who designed a building. They are not the laborers or the, building managers who will be putting the blocks together, making sure that the daily operations give effect to those goals that were stated in the blueprint. Rather, they will be supervising, they will come in, they will look, they will check to see that the design is being upheld. That's the way you should, that's the way you can, that's the analogy that can best, that is useful to. So the board governs, while the staff led by the executive director, you manage. So like I said, it's a complementary role. You're complementing each other, but one designs creates the design, the ultimate blueprint, while the other one now goes out onto the field daily to bring it to life and manifestation. So let's look critically then at, these distinctions in terms of the distinction between the governance structure of your organization and the management responsibilities. For instance, your board is not expected to do the hiring of staff for you. Maybe you are targeting some funds, or you want to achieve a level of income for your organization. Your board is not going to be the one to write the grant proposal documents for you. That's why I'm always saying, be careful, because when you start out, what usually happens, and I see it happening quite often with young or small CBOs, community-based organizations. When you started out, that's why the question many of you were asking, for me, is a sign of a potential pitfall. Oh, I registered with my wife and maybe one other friend, and we are the founders. So we are both the founders, and we are both the trustees. We registered with CAC, we put our names as incorporated trustees. Now, I always ask such people, when you registered, how did you envisage the role? Did you plan that all three of you will be on the board? If that is the case, the three of you on the board cannot be the management. You cannot then be executive director and staff, because you've put yourselves as trustees. It's a separate role you are serving. You are then working in the interest of the public to act as oversight over this organization. So I hope you're gaining clarity. However, if when you established yourselves as the founding members, you made it clear these two amongst us will be on the board, while one will be in management. Maybe one of us is the executive director. You must separate your roles. You have to then understand that those two who are registered as trustees are always going to be supervising. You're going to be reporting to them. They're going to be evaluating your performance to make sure that you are acting in conformity or in alignment with the grand vision you devised for that organization. But usually when you started out like that, the three of you founding members, you were the ones working on all the documents. You were the ones developing proposal. You were the ones, preparing strategic plan. You were the ones preparing minutes of meetings. So you yourself, sometimes you're confused. You don't have clarity about the separation of roles. That thing you were doing as founding members, the minute you then register and incorporate, you have to separate your actions, or you have to then distinguish your roles and very clearly demarcate your activities. You are no longer expected to be creating or developing the day-to-day running documents, working documents of the organization. You're preparing an annual budget. You as the board member should not be preparing an annual budget. You should be reviewing and approving an annual budget. So that's why I'm saying the way we start, you must be careful as you are evolving and growing to be evolving along with good practices. If you started as a group of 5 friends and all of you now incorporated, registered, and put all your 5 names with CAC, when the organization is incorporated, you must sit down amongst yourselves, you 5 friends, to say, which of us is on the board and which of us is going to be responsible to handle the day-to-day management functions, that is the operational tasks of the organization. Separate it and never confuse it. Don't merge it. Because if you merge it, that means that there's no governing organ. You're just a group of friends. I heard somebody asked a meeting and said in last week's session, Monday session. I said we have a few friends who registered, but the problem is when we come for board meetings, there's too much familiarity, and then we never make any headway. These things arise because duties and roles are not very, very clearly spelled out. People don't have an understanding. when you were deciding to set up this NGO, from that get-go, as you took your names to CAC, you should have been very specific about those who are going to be registered as trustees. And if you already made the mistake of putting all your names, you have to go back in your planning and your management or your next board meeting and pass certain resolutions. It is not tidy. It is not a good practice for all of us who are both the management staff, to all of us be listed as trustees. So you tidy up all loose ends and go and clarify those things. The board, like I said, the understanding when you create a non-profit, because the perception or the way non-profits are is that they are taking resources from well-meaning entities or individuals in society to pursue non-governmental objectives. That is, to pursue objectives in the interest of the community, developmental objectives in the interest of the community. So those people who serve on the board, the law registers them to act for the community, to act in this organization on behalf of the community. That is the mindset of the law, that I am incorporating these 5 trustees. They will always oversee the activities and operations of this organization to make sure that whatever they are doing is truly in pursuit of those development objectives on behalf of the community. So you are acting in trust for the community. Remember when we talked about duty of care on Monday, we elaborated on this. So that is why your board is a link between the community and you, the staff in that organization, or you, the founder. That's why I said, as much as possible, when you are composing your board, try to bring in diverse, profiles of people who match the different profiles that are in the community. Your board should be a replica of the pool of people or profiles of people within the largest community you're functioning in. If you're a national NGO, you should have people, who represent the different maybe ethnic groups in Nigeria on your board. You should have people across different professional leanings within your board. You should have people of, different religious inclinations on your board. This is for secular NGOs now, typically draw from its members to form its board. So, but, you should be gender representative. You should be, inclusive as much as possible of the different profiles of members in larger society, because that board is a link. They're acting in the interest of that community. Your board is representing the interest of the community. I cannot stress that enough. You, the executive director, you are overseeing the operations. That's why, when we look at the CV of an executive director, you typically see things like, I'm the strategic lead. That is, I lead the strategies that give birth or give, effect to the goals or vision or founding documents of the organization. Maybe the organization wants to basically drive climate, whatever the things you're pursuing are. In the room, I know there are different organizations focused on different thematic objectives. Empowerment of rural women. So you are the one that oversees the day-to-day operations. You are the one that handles team supervision. You build a team, you recruit the team, responsible for ensuring that HR practices, are respected. But those HR policies, it is your board, for instance, that would have approved them. You would have submitted some draft HR, some policies to your board to say, this is how. The policies always represent how we will go about things, how we will protect, staff working conditions, how we will go about assets, how we will ensure safeguarding, how we will do this and that. That's policy. Your board must always approve your policies. Then you are the one that operationalizes your policies. You're the one that has staff trainings. You're the one that sets up meetings, Monday meeting, Friday meeting. You're the one that requests for reports, maybe on a weekly basis or monthly basis, all your staff are submitting their reports. You're the one that approves expenditures. You're the one who, is basically going about with different stakeholders to hold meetings. Sometimes, like I said, in ad hoc capacity, you can invite your board members. Maybe they are serving as ad hoc. There's a committee you set up for ad hoc fundraising or for ad hoc, maybe celebration of the anniversary of 20 years of the board is set, an ad hoc committee is set up. So that's in instances like that, you'll be inviting your board to be more involved in operational tasks than they typically would be. So you'll see sometimes some people will go for courtesy visits to traditional rulers and they are led by a board chairperson. Oh, this and that, engagement with members of this community affected by flooding disaster. And you see 2 members of the board accompanying the management staff. So occasionally you have instances like that. But in the typical situations, you cannot tell your board member to come and moderate staff meeting on Monday meeting. So you must be very careful, like I said, of how you are, navigating the role between your board and yourself. When you are creating the annual budget, it is your responsibility as the executive director to look at all the programmatic objectives, the scope of programs, last year's overheads, your administrative expenditures for last year, all your expenditures, and then the new programs you want to run this year, and to harmonize your budget, and then to present it to your board. It is not your board that will come up with the budget. Your board will simply look at that budget. You will defend the budget. The board will approve your budget, or they will make, certain recommendations. Similarly, your annual work plan. You're the one who will go to the board and say, given our strategic objectives for the next 3 years, which is derived from our strategic plan that we are following, this year we have this, this document showcases the work plan of activities scheduled for the year. We are planning to host this program in between, in the first quarter drives. In the third quarter, we are planning to do so and so. In quarter 4, we're also planning to do, school visitations or stakeholder summits or whatever. So you will map out all the activities planned for the year and itemize the budgets. And that's what came about. That's what you harmonize into the central working budget that you submitted to the board. The board will then look at your work plan and say, oh, we saw that this program was particularly successful and impactful. Ask you a couple of questions. You will then, that is your responsibility. If you say that this year you want to set a target to raise, maybe last year you were able to raise maybe 10 million from individual giving circles, that is not grants, individuals, sponsorships, whatever, and this year you're targeting 20 million. You will present to the board your fundraising plan, your plan to be able to achieve that fundraising target. Your board will then approve or disapprove of that plan. Obviously tells you that you must be having your board meetings frequently for the board to be able to perform those functions. Apart from the engagement strategies you are using to ensure that the board is supporting you, individuals on the board are continuing to market the organization, you must always convene those meetings. So you as the executive director, you are the link to your board. You must be reporting to them as at when appropriate, as at when due. You must be submitting all reports to them, send it to their emails, have prints of these documents, dispatch it via courier, send information to the board so that the board can act. For you to have effective board decisions, it means that you've armed them with sufficient information that they can arrive at informed decisions. So give your board informed information, timely information. Reports have to be submitted. End of year reports, they're important. End of year reports are important. They should capture the programmatic life and the financial life. You should be able to tell your board that this year we worked on, maybe we were able to achieve a grant, but we were in a very unhealthy position because we only raised, individual donations up to this tune of amount, which means that if that grant was suspended or in any way, terminated, we wouldn't have been able to operate as an organization. We are not, therefore, financially sustainable. Things like that help the board to think, to say, what is the next step for this organization? Also, when we talk about enhancing the working relationship between the board chair and the executive director, these are, again, the responsibilities fall squarely with the executive director. You have to have a good relationship with your board chairperson. You have to be able to relate with him or her in such a way that, because remember, the board chairperson presides over the board, has to moderate over the board meetings, has to be very well informed and carried along, and has to be up to date on the activities and progress of the organization, so that at board level, he's guiding the board up, or she is guiding the board appropriately. The only way that happens is when you are effectively communicating with your board chairperson. Don't just appear in January and then reappear in November in terms of communication with your board chairperson. Make frequent phone calls. Just check on the person, how is he or her. Send them a report. Tell them to please go over the report, and maybe you can discuss paragraph 5 because they are busy individuals. But you can just use creative ways. Oh, I want your insights on paragraph 4 and 5 on the report I sent to you, sir or ma. Can we discuss it over a 15-minute phone call on Wednesday, so and so date? That way, the board member, after that discussion, the board chairman is already, has thoughts for the next board meeting that is likely to come up. So please engage visit them in their office, schedule meetings, go to their offices, discuss with them some of or your state to come and check on your activities. Invite them to be present at that, interaction with donor partners. So carry them along, very critical. Because when you have that sense of partnership and cooperation from your board chairperson, it usually is a smooth sailing. Usually when you make requests of them, your board is eager to support you. So, it's important. These are things that you should be doing to ensure that your board provides your board chairperson provides the kind of leadership that you want, that board chairperson, reminds all members. So apart from you that sending reminder, the board chairperson too can even see all of you. And because of the stature or the profile of that person, the minute he or she wades in and puts in his own, extra sort of reminder for a meeting, it is almost conclusive that others will all attend. So these are little things that you can do to muster that level of, support from your board chairperson. Let's look at managing board changes. I know some of us, after last session, we were thinking about, okay, some of the errors we made, how do we revisit it? Maybe when you were composing your board, you weren't quite sensitive in terms of composition. You don't have a board that brings in diverse skills into the board entity to be able to make, bring in unique insights, diverse perspectives into board decision-making process, and you want to change that. Or maybe some of you, I know you are grappling with some of these questions. Okay, how do I go back and change my board or restructure my board? Now, these are processes I say have to be managed very carefully, because you see, management changes, board changes can affect an organization if not well handled. It can mean that you're going to have a non-performing board if people feel slighted, or if new people see the way you handled the previous set of board members. They will just say, these people, tomorrow now they will just come and give us a letter of disengagement and just So you want to instill confidence in your board. You don't want them to feel like they are dispensable. You want your board to feel highly respected. You want your board to feel like it is a very distinguished entity, that you safeguard its interests, that you don't joke with it, you don't at any point in time abuse it as a resource, So you want to instill that sense of confidence. That's why you must manage board changes smoothly. Now we are young organizations. Very many of us in the room, maybe apart from a few, or your organization is still at its very nascent or early stages. But if you hope to sustain that your organization, you hope to grow, then you should be thinking about these things in your future and seeing that these challenges are inevitable. So you must be prepared to deal with them appropriately. Like I said, most times, I see it in the life of many organizations that the first set of people that volunteer to start the organization are the names that they equally put in as the registered trustees. Those group of your friends, You were all volunteering your time. You were discussing this thing you want to do. Next thing, when it was time to incorporate, you just went ahead and they evolved from volunteers to board members. So it turns out that they are not then capable of delivering what a board should deliver. Or maybe things have changed in their lives. They've gotten jobs somewhere, they've gotten married. That zeal that they had at the initial start, when you're of you were, dreaming of this thing, discussing this thing, that zeal has waned, is no longer present. And so you will beg them to come for meeting, they will not come. When they come, they're infrequent or they're passive participants, so you're not getting from them that same level of, ginger, to use the informal phrase. You're not getting from them that same level of enthusiasm that you want. So you are faced with a situation where you want a more effective and engaged board. You might need to change them. How do you handle these things? So that's why I'm saying, look at this. You have to critically and very objectively due for change. Are you due for change? Is it time for you to then really, restructure, recompose so that you can, have a more involved board? The fact that we're saying you must manage the change process doesn't mean that you should run away from hard decisions or tough decisions that you need to make. It's just that you must be wise in how you go about it. So you must adapt to the realities of your situation. If you've had board members that in the last 3 years you have never met, you've not shared reports with them, they themselves, they've not inquired, they've not reached out to you, that come, that organization we started itself, how far? What's going on now? I've not heard anything from you. Sometimes they've even disappeared from the communication landscape. You cannot reach them on Facebook. You cannot reach them on LinkedIn. You don't have their phone number anymore. They've relocated to Canada. They've relocated to this and that. You might have to go back to each of them to ask them again whether they are still committed to this organization. Because when you register them as trustees, most likely you gave them life tenure. Things like that. So you're going to have to review critically your situation and then make certain decisions. Having arrived at an understanding of where you are, like I said, you need to be able to manage the process. Some organizations, when you started, you were working strictly with volunteers. And then maybe you just got one small grant, one $5,000 grant from the US Public Affairs section that has made it possible for you to move your volunteers to paid, salaries, or you have 1 or 2 paid staff. At that point in time, you see, you are gradually gaining more structure. You are less abstract. You are not just, somebody that you people just gather twice a month in one community to do one sensitization thing, and then the rest of the time is phone calls you are discussing with. You see, you are now moving closer and closer to structure. So you will now be able to hire or rent one small space, and you people will be able to come. Then that place begins to be like your secretariat. Next thing, it begins to have office equipment. You begin to have, structured working hours. So you must be sensitive to the transitions in the life of your organization. As you are evolving, your board must be carried along. In your board meetings, you need to be able to tell them that right now we are at the stage of organizational structuring. We are moving from, existing on a paper, having a blueprint on a paper, to becoming a tangible entity with working structures. So we're focused on that. Right now, for the next 1 year in the life of this organization, we're focused on hiring the right set of people, having, a working office template, running template for office functions, things like that. So as you are formalizing, you must be ensuring that your board is moving along with you in that process. So if it turns out that the board, when you first started, they were all the staff, your board was equally staff, you need to be disengaging them from those things so that they can now be acting in oversight of the actual staff, so that they can be, supervising you. You can be reporting to them. They can challenge you and say, oh, but we said that this time around, we should not be directing resources to scaling. Right now, we're piloting programs. We're trying to see what programs work. How come you took this amount of money to go and scale this program? We should not be scaling any program. So that's the kind of thing your board should be doing for you. Why did you expand this program into 2 or 3 additional communities or schools? What we expected is that after piloting in this one school, you should have prepared the report. Based on that report, we would have been able to come up with a concept document which would serve as maybe grant proposals to donors to say, we piloted this program in this place, and now we're requesting for, a grant from you to be able to scale. You should not have taken these resources to take this same program into the second school, because that is against the strategic plan we are working, that is guiding us, our framework right now. That's the way your board should be working. But if your board is still the one developing the proposal, your board is still the one that is preparing the workshop, agenda, when you're going to the school, your board is the one that is preparing the facilitator's guide. So your board will now not be able to even say, no, for this 1 year or 2 years, we must not be doing this, that we shouldn't be taking this program into 5 more schools. Because, these things, as simple as they affect your chances to survive or to suffer a mortality, to suffer death in the first. I told you that very few NGOs, young CBOs that start out are able to survive the first 10 years of existence. There's a high incidence of mortality of NGOs in the first 10 years. It's because of errors like this. But if your board is an effective organ doing its oversight well, you will see, you will complement each other, it will guide you with wisdom. And then the small money you people have, you'll be able to weather the toughest times. Those same board members will be talking to people in their networks. Next thing you know, somebody will take an interest in the organization and say, submit a proposal to us. We like this program you piloted in Taraba State, in this local government, or in this hospital, or in this school. We're thinking of, it's part of our own cause that we want to advance. So we're thinking of adding your program to our portfolio, things like that. Another thing that can cause an organization to require change of its board members is rapid growth. Like I said, sometimes, somebody took notice of you. You were doing the work well. You thought, you weren't being noticed. Or maybe some application you submitted somewhere hit the interest of a donor somewhere. It turns out that thing that program you've designed, that theory of change you've elaborated on, falls within the scope of one of the causes somebody wants to advance. And then they say, we selected you for a grant. And next thing you have, 10 people on your staff. Next thing you have, 2 offices. Maybe the grant says, well, I know you piloted this thing in one committee, but we want you to be a 3-state project. And next thing you know it, you have an office in Ogun State. You have an office in Ibadan, Oyo State. You have an office in Cross River State. Or think of any, multi-state project that you've ever worked on. Or they tell you that we want this to be in 11 local governments, even though you piloted it in only 1 local government. And so you have to have operational capacity in these separate local governments. Next thing you know, the point is, as an organization, you are bigger than how it was when you people first started. Your board has to be able to adapt to that new size. Your board has to be able to govern that new size. That's why I said the complexity of your board must be dependent, is coterminous with the structure of the organization. When the management size begins to grow, when the complexity of the organization begins to expand, equally, you must make sure that your governing structure can keep up. That's why you have sometimes a board that started out as 3 members, 3 incorporated trustees, or 3 members in the board of directors. Next thing, you start recruiting more board members, because maybe when you first started out, you were focused strictly on youth employability. And then a donor that is working in climate change says, I want you to focus on youth employability for the green sector. Next thing you know, you have to bring somebody on your board who has an understanding of climate and the environment. So you see, you're bringing in more subject matter experts into your board. Or you suddenly have to have operations in different, states or local governments, like I illustrated before. And in that therefore means that you need more board members to be able to effectively scrutinize. The donor says, I want to look at your board structure. I have to have confidence that your board is objective, your board is seasoned or experienced enough. So to give that donor the kind of confidence they want, you then go and start looking for people from different professional, fields. You go and bring in a very top qualified administrator who you are able to convince the donors will be able to guide the administrative, architecture of your organization, that as your organization is expanding to recruit more staff, to open up more offices, to manage more resources, resources and assets, this member of our board is guiding the policies that we are embracing, is guiding how, we are operationalizing our policies. And so you can be assured, Mr. Donor, that we will never have a wasteful structure, for instance, that you will never have, far more staff than you need. And at the same time, you will never have too few convinced donors, that you have the right kind of mix. I told you about a time I was being interviewed for a grant, and they sent in people from the United Kingdom. This was one of the previous sessions in strategic planning. I think I mentioned this to those who were in attendance. Some donors will send people from foreign countries to come and conduct due diligence of your organization. They will sit with you for 1 week to see how you function. They will follow you on your field projects. They will request to see your board members. Yes, they will request to see those who are maybe within location. And a private meeting with your board chairperson. We want to have a meeting with 2 or 3 members of your board, and they begin to interrogate your board members. They're not interrogating them in a hostile way. They're just asking questions. Those questions are helping them to decide, can I work with this person or not? Imagine if on your board you had maybe a professor of public health who was able to share how he was excited when your organization took up that project, on child nutrition, and you were able to sensitize, new mothers on how to manage diarrhea-related, diarrhea incidents or things like that. And because of the confidence or the excitement and enthusiasm that member of your board is sharing, the donor is saying, this man is actually involved. He attends the meetings. He knows what this organization is doing. So this organization's leader will never at any point in time unilaterally spend money without reporting. The organization is growing, expanding. If not the size, the diversity of your board. Sometimes you want to go into rural women empowerment, and then before, maybe your board was only, maybe you had 5 men on the board. You want to do rural women empowerment. The donor will say, show me the profiles of your board member, and there's no woman, or there's no rural woman. Maybe all the women on your board are all city-based women, top executives, highly urban, highly mobile women. So they're querying that. They're saying, who is the person who brings in the unique understanding of the challenges of the rural woman? Then you're able to say, oh, we also have on our board a former chairperson of the Market Women Association in that local government. She's a member of our board of advisors. So things like that. So you see that's why sometimes as you're expanding your board, you're bringing in a lot of these other profiles of people that initially when you started, you didn't have them. Again, changing needs. When we first started out in this, just a few years ago, we were all pursuing the Millennium Development Goals. At some point in time, it shifted to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you break down the framework of the SDGs, within it that are being used to measure those goals, organizations exist along those parameters or indicators. For eradication of poverty, for instance, there are many things that are used to measure that. Eradication of poverty, people are measuring a level of skills transfer. People are measuring, jobs, introduction of new jobs into communities. So you see, organizations can be operating at different pillars of those things. The minute, maybe when you first started, you just said you are a poverty eradication organization. But then the World Bank suddenly sends out, a new guidance note, or as we have recently witnessed, USAID sends out a new guidance note for what its priorities are in terms of maybe education. Maybe before the focus was on access, and suddenly the focus of the world's donors is shifting to qualitative and relevant education, or the focus is shifting to education in emergencies. You will notice that your thematic focus will also be shifting along those priorities. And in the process, your structure is changing. Maybe you're hiring new staff that have expertise on education in emergencies. Maybe it becomes incumbent at that point in time to even have on your board somebody who has handled, or in one way, shape, or form or the other, supervised projects around the world, globally or regionally within Africa, dealing with education in emergency, so that whenever you people want to design EIE interventions, that person on your board can guide you. So you see, changing needs in the organization pivots. Sometimes even the things that you started doing at the beginning, they are no longer relevant. It may turn out that when you first started in this community, what the community needed was fertilizers. But after a certain years of operating in that community, the need of the community is not organic fertilizer of that community of farmers. Maybe it's an agro-based community. Their need is no longer how to, create for themselves organic fertilizers. And so as an NGO, your focus must shift. Maybe at that point in time, that community has embraced mechanized farming. And so the need of that community is how to incorporate, new climate-friendly farming methods and practices into mechanized farming approaches. So as they're embracing tractor, embracing all these, machines into their farming practices, you as the community NGO, you working there must be able to teach those sets of rural farmers how to do this mechanized farming in a way that respects and upholds the environment, so that they don't begin to suffer adverse effects of climate change. You're teaching them how to use their mechanized farming methods to set up irrigation structures, so that if there's a drought tomorrow, their harvest yields will not be affected, or they'll suddenly suffer loss because they don't have any alternative sources of water. So that becomes the need. You will see that changing need will also reflect on your board. You're going to have to bring in people who understand the changing conversations, so that your board is not just a group of dinosaurs. Forgive me for using such a term, but it's not just a group of people who retired 20 years ago from, and they were veterans in this, and then the world has changed, the conversations have changed, and they are not apace with the new discussions. Because if that is the case, you will not be getting the best kind of judgment from your board members. You will not be getting the best kind of connections. Your board members will not know the new industry discussions. They will know the new players in industry. They will know the new convenings. Sometimes in my board meeting, my board members will tell me, this is the last one at Glasgow. How does it affect the programming that you have just designed this year? Everybody's focus is on how to ensure climate change practices are adapted into every aspect of our lives. This is because I have board members who are keeping up with the global conversations and trends. So they will challenge us in management to say, we want you to be able to present to us how this your annual work plan reflects the resolutions that were passed at the last Glasgow held COP. I don't remember whether it was COP 60 or COP whatever it is called, but that last convening of global world leaders around climate change and all the mitigation strategies and all the resolutions that countries have to pass and follow. This is a board that is in touch with its environment, in tune with its environment. It is important. Without that, perhaps we would not have been challenged to then begin to see how we can even, pursue newer avenues for grant funding, that we're not shifting away. Remember, it's dangerous as an organization when you just be chasing, because you're chasing grants. 1 minute you say you are education focused, next minute you've changed the mission of your organization to health organization. No, but there are ways that you can incorporate general principles like climate, mitigation and adaptation into the existing work you're doing. If organization, and yet you incorporate gender responsive or gender transformative principles into your approaches, and that makes you then eligible for gender related grants. So this is how you should be thinking. I am not working in maybe public health, but how can I introduce health related safeguarding into my work so that my work never becomes a vehicle through which pandemics can spread? Do you know that may make you eligible for a public health related grant, even though your work is clearly outside the scope of public health? So this is how your board will guide you. This is how you'll be changing your board members to reflect the changing needs. Again, another thing that could give rise to the need to change your board is the departure of a founder. Sometimes the founder is leaving, when the founder is leaving, it's usually a dangerous thing, because the glue that holds everybody together, you see, because that organization is like your child, you know, you've invested in that child. A similar level of emotional investment in the minds of your board members and the staff, the likelihood of that, everybody else possessing the same zeal and energy for that organization that you have is slim. You are probably going to be the most passionate person about that organization. But there are ways to work around this. If you build an effective board, if you recruit the right people who are also passionate about a cause, and you engage them effectively and strategically, it does not need to signal the death of an organization when a founder goes. However, certain changes may need to be made. Sometimes the founder who was serving as the executive director needs to move on away from management, day-to-day management, to the board level. Because sometimes maybe you've embraced other aspects of professional growth. Maybe even though you are running this thing, or maybe for family, personal reasons, you need to relocate, you need to move on, whatever the case may be. Or maybe just on principle, you always told yourself that you will never be a founder in perpetuity who remains the manager for life. After 10 years, you want to go, and you want to make sure that this structure that you founded can survive in your absence. At that point in time, you're looking at moving on to perhaps the higher organ, which is the board, where you just come in as, you know, a board member from time to time during the routine meetings. And then there's another competent person, well recruited through the right procedures. Don't just give somebody who's your child or that's your nephew who has always been around you. These are the mistakes we make. We keep it in the family. We just assume that it becomes a family. It's not a family business. And sometimes the person you transfer that responsibility to is not the best equipped for the role. So you must recruit the next executive director using the best practices for hiring. You must call for applications. You must interview them with an independent panel, not just yourself. Having interviewed the person, you know, you look at you conduct your due diligence, you check do the necessary background checks, then you identify amongst the candidates that were interviewed, who is the best. That's what some organizations do. And so you see that, you know, their executive directors are changing, and the people that founded the organization have moved on to the board. So these things cause changes. You see yourself as the founder, but you are no longer managing the day-to-day operations. You've moved on to the board. And when you move on to the board, don't be a founder that a board member that micromanages, because you were once the founder and executive director. You know what is happening. So you are always, you know, breathing down the neck of the new execs, you know, lead to changes in the board structure. Sometimes you will even go out entirely from the organization, and they will just be engaging you as a stakeholder, a consent stakeholder. That occurs as well. But because of that passion you have, you probably always make donations, you probably send your annual checks to the organization, things like that. You always use your networks to recommend this organization to people and such things. Crisis is another thing that leads to changes in your board. Sometimes you're faced with a serious crisis and the existing board members are not equipped to handle it. You might you'll see in occasions like that, the board, sometimes there's a complete overhaul of the board. You will see serious radical changes that are made, sweeping changes made to board members in such instances. So, but usually there's maybe another entity, maybe there's a trustee organ that is functioning at that level, or there's sometimes maybe there are investors or donors who are really guiding the life of that organization. And so they change the entire board structure. But these are incidents that can require the need to change your board. If you are, as a founder, you're still serving in the organization, and then there's a major crisis you need to deal with, like maybe suddenly the organization has zero funding, no funding at all. And then you decide that, okay, this is the strategy you are going to adopt to be able to, you know, resuscitate or revive some few funding sources. It might mean that you go and bring in some, you know, some maybe deep philanthropists, some very, very wealthy philanthropists, and then you even invite them to serve on your board. One or two of them might now be invited to serve on your board, because you want to ensure that that person's presence on the board represents a constant link between either that person's family foundation or trust fund or that person's, company or corporation, so that the CSR funds will always come your way. So these are some strategic things people do to ensure, pathways to funding or pathways to the right technical knowledge and things like that for your board, for your life of your organization. So why we're pointing this out is so that you as the founder and leader, you must be sensitive, please. The reason why we are taking time to break down these, trends is so that you are sensitive in the life of your organization. You always understand what season you are in. Are you in a season of rapid growth? If so, you have to look at your board. Is your board keeping up with that rapid growth? Are you in a season of changing needs? What are the needs that are changing? And how does it affect your current existing board? The current composition of your board, can it keep up with that changing need and new direction that you are facing as an organization? If it cannot, then you have to ask yourself out, who do I need to disengage? And there are creative ways to do that. Doesn't mean you should give all your board members letters of termination. Maybe you go back to the board and you say, given the new strategic direction the organization is facing, we want to invite all board members to review their current status with the organization to be able to renew their commitment. You can call it a board commitment renewal exercise. So you want everybody to look at the new strategic document that you worked on with some consultants, and to say, for the amount of funds, the organization is targeting this level of scale, the organization is targeting so and so. In view of this, the commitments of the board are going to drastically increase to this measure. In this measure, we are now going to be having, instead of the typical twice a year meetings, all board members are going to be required to attend quarterly meetings. Board members are going to be required to please make personal commitments up to the tune of this amount. By the time you spell it out, you now say, based on these terms above, we invite those who are still interested in serving to renew their commitment by signing these additional terms of reference. Those who know that, this one passed my power, they will just quietly exit. So these are strategic ways you can engage people, you can remove people. But meanwhile, on standby, you already have a fixed new set of people you've already identified, and they've said, I'm willing to join this new cause. And then you gradually wean off those old ones and bring in these new ones. But I always discourage anybody from going to somebody and say, here's your termination letter. The board, remember, is also separate from you, even though as the founder, the problem with us in this part of the world is that boards are never totally independent, because it's the founder's drive and vision that is still driving the board. So most times, even when you want to bring in new board members, it is you, the founder, that nominates or recommends to the board that, please, I'm bringing up this profile of this new individual for your consideration. In an ideal setting, it ought not to be. The board is the one that should be responsible for bringing in its own members, appointing its own new chairpersons. But if you leave it to the board, is it a board that you're constantly begging, please attend meeting, or you're sending reminder to, that you will just leave it totally in their care to handle all those things? It doesn't work in the real practical sense of it. It doesn't work that way. You are still to a large extent involved in board activities. So similarly, when it is time to disengage some members, do it tactically. If you want to somebody who has been non-responsive, you can use the rapport you have built with your chairman. This is the time to begin to leverage those things. You have those, like I said, when you visit your chairperson, you have those side meetings, you say, Mr. Chairman, sir, I think it is imminent at this point in time for us to, declare that position a vacancy, so that we bring in somebody who can really, really be effective for us. This other man or woman has not been attending meetings. Please, sir, I'm leaving it within your purview. I'm hoping that you can handle that exercise for us at the next meeting, sir, by calling, or activating the terms of our constitution, by looking at members' attendance and saying those who have failed to meet up with the required number of attendance, 3 meetings, 4 meetings, whatever, are hereby, a resolution should therefore be passed by members' office, or, is hereby ended, and whether we should then be seeking. So the board chairman can handle those things for you, as opposed to you coming in as the executive director and, being like Inspector Gadget and terminating and, basically asking people to vacate the job of board chairperson. So the point is, these are terrains that you must navigate with a lot of emotional intelligence, please, and confidence of your board chairperson. And it is not safe when your board chairperson, you are executive director, you are maybe a spouse, and your board chairperson is a spouse. The people in that, setting, they will view it as a couples, that is a couple, they are just working for this couple. That's why I'm always very wary when I hear people say, oh, it's me and my husband registered it. He is on the board. I am the one that is on the management. Please trust, because very rarely will a husband be able to act in oversight over the wife in that kind of formal capacity, and vice versa. So if your situation is such that you are a couple, please look at your arrangement and your structure very carefully, and never don't leave all these murky waters. Don't muddy the waters, please. So because I'm suspecting questions will come around that as well. Let's move on to the final session, which is board assessment and evaluation. I've hinted at this in some of the previous comments I've been making. But like I said, if somebody has a duty to perform, it also presupposes that there must be a performance appraisal at the end of a period to be able to assess, has that duty been performed? If your board members owe you a duty of certain kinds of performances, there must be a time periodically in the life of your organization where you, as the founder or executive director, you are also reviewing the performance of your board to say, are they doing what they ought to do? So you don't just hire board members and go to sleep. That means that organ is just going to be a decorative organ. It's not a functioning organ. If an organ is functional, no way, it is always evaluated. It is always appraised. Is it in good health, or is it not, or is it in poor health? Even the organs of our bodies, our biological systems, the organs in our societies, the organs in our workplaces, we know when it is non-functioning because we begin to see signs of ill health. Similarly, you must assess your board to determine, is it performing or is it non-performing? Because there will be indications as a result of, there will be some indications of ill health as a result of that poor performance. Either you people are never able to hit, or the board is never able to bring in any form of money. It is a sign of ill health. Or the board is never able to support you in facilitating any kind of connection, corporate sponsorship connection, community stakeholder relationship. You want to go into a difficult community and you've been trying to access a traditional leader or some key influential person in such a community. The board does not help you in that manner at all. The board does not attend meetings to review your, documents, your reports. The board has never been able to pass a single resolution approving a single new policy. These are signs of ill health, or these are signs of a non-performing board. You must be able to evaluate. How do you evaluate? Remember your terms of reference. It goes back to the founding, the memorandum of understanding. If I had an understanding with somebody that the person will do these 10 things for me, I need to be able to check at the end of whether it's a year or 2 years. Has the person done these 10 things for me? Because that was the understanding, not so. That is why it is important for you to be able to outline the responsibilities of your board. Communicate it to them so that it is very clear that you told them and they agreed. Having done so, you don't go to sleep. You must be periodically evaluating to see, are they doing what they agreed to do? If they are not, is it a failure on your part that is contributing to that? Is it because you're not, you yourself, maybe you never called for a meeting. You yourself, you never send them notices of meeting. You never send them agenda of meeting. You yourself, you never send them one single program report. You yourself, you never made a single phone call. You didn't use the creative WhatsApp groups to even convene, put them together in one place to be sending them, group report. You didn't even do anything. Then you might say, okay, the reason why my board has failed to live up to those responsibilities responsibility is because I myself did not employ any board engagement strategies. Let me use the next 1 year to do that, on the basis of which I will then evaluate their performance next year. But if you did everything and it still turns out that you have a non-responsive board, I think it is very evident by this point, by such a time, that you are due for some, rejigs, some board rejigs. So you must evaluate your board. The way you evaluate your staff, you have to have a rubric. In my organization, we do bi-monthly staff appraisals. Similarly, you have to have, whether it's yearly board appraisals, you have to have a document that inputs the indicators you are using. Those documents is easy to create them because you have terms of reference. So one of the ways you can do that is share the appraisal with the board member. At the end of this year, we would like to, either you send it to them, or you make a phone call, or you in the next meeting with them, you do it individually, you assess, you tell them that we are very excited that you were able to support us in the following ways. The way you appraise a board member, the language you use is very different from how you appraise a staff member, but you still find creative ways to say, here's how we hope you can, effectively support us better. Here are areas where we invite you to, enhance further support. Here are aspects in the, in the role you are working with that we are so thankful for in the last year. In the last year, you attended this number of meetings and we appreciate you. In the last year of serving as a board member, you provided unique insights during board deliberative processes that contributed to resolutions passed. In the last year, you helped guide us in the approval of these new policies. Oh, we adopted a so and so policy. We adopted this, so there are some generic things you just thank everybody for. The areas where they were weak, you as the leader, you say, here are these 3 or 4 additional areas where we wish you will support us better next year. Area of fundraising. The organization hopes to achieve its target to reach the following, income for next year. With your support by doing the following: sharing our reports to at least 5 to 10 individuals within your professional networks. Reposting our social media, posts and whatever. Submitting the names of maybe some individuals that we should approach for donations. So you see, you have even been very specific about what you want from them. That is a way that you are appraising them, and please, as founders, that you support your board members to support you better. So the goal of your appraisal of a board member is not to begin to tell them, you did well here, you didn't do well here. They are not your staff, you're not paying them a salary, remember. So, but at the same time, you want to, inspire them through compliments. By the time you tell somebody what they did well, it reinforces, that action. It makes it likely that they will repeat it. And by the time you hint at areas where you need more support from them, and you are even specific about to deliver more effectively for you. So these are things, please, if you don't appraise your board members, introduce that culture. At the end of the year, send an appraisal email, an appraisal testament, an appraisal document, a board appraisal or board review, board performance appraisal, board performance, give it a nice name, appreciation, an appreciation review of all our board members. And then you now break down and itemize for them. You can even do it at your end of the last quarter's meeting, or you do it just before the close of, the last week of work in the yearly calendar before offices close, and you send it to them. When you send it to their email, you notify them either by phone call that, please, we sent out very important emails to all of you, just sharing with you how much your support meant to us. We itemized, or we created an outline of the areas where you really helped us. And we also pointed out areas where we need more effort from you, or we're looking forward to more effort from you. They will read it. In fact, you can use your social media pages as a strategic page for evaluations. You can do board member highlights. You highlight your chairman and you say, we celebrate our chairman of our board for the following 5, for these 5 important contributions he has made to the life of our organization. And next thing, he's going somewhere and a friend calls him and says, I saw you, my daughter showed me one organization's page and your picture is there celebrating you. Well done, Ekusheo, and begins to praise them. They'll be happy that some people are calling them that their face is showing. If you even have more influence, some organizations would dedicate half a page in a newspaper just to celebrate their board members. You do that investment and you celebrate all your board members for that year. And you say, we wish to thank the board members of our organization for their contributions to the service of the organization or the impact recorded this year. We thank them especially for these 5, concrete contributions, or this, you highlight the service rendering. That is another thing, because most people will still read the national dailies, and in their generation, in a certain age bracket in Nigeria, that's where they derive their information sources from. Or imagine if you have a radio program or you go on air somewhere and you make mention, you are very deliberate and intentional, and you make mention of your board members. At the end of the year, you want to thank them. This organization was only able to do this and this because of the wonderful wisdom and counsel that our board rendered for us this year. Specifically, we give credit to former ambassador to the Philippines, this, that. We thank especially retired general, blah, 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 blah. We thank especially pastor or, imam of this, so, this, that parish, or, and you mention their names. So you please be very, very ingenious as a leader to always give them credit. It's a way of evaluating them. Evaluation is not only when you're pointing out weaknesses, it's equally pointing out areas of strength and opportunities for growth. So always share with them in those evaluations these, weaknesses where you want them to come in further. Targets that you were not able to meet, goals that you weren't able to meet in the organization's life, and you want them to do more work or put in more effort to help you achieve that. So from everything I've indicated, you can see that these are some of the areas of evaluation. The board itself assesses itself. Sometimes those appraisal statements, you can even send it to the board members. Can they do a critical appraisal to see how well they were able to support the work of the organization by asking this set of questions? It's an exercise you can invite them to do. You would have trained them during orientation already that here in our organization, please, at the end of every year, we will send all board members 5 sets of questions. These questions are strictly for internal introspection. These questions require the board members to reflect by themselves on how well they were able to support the growth of the organization in these following 5 areas. So that is a tool you can use. You can engage, self-reflective, self-assessment mechanisms. So you send them either a form where they answer it by themselves, or you send them the questions on a WhatsApp group that you belong in, so that it doesn't feel too, like you're putting them as one of your management staff. Do you understand? So there are ways you can go about it. Also, the board is evaluating you. Every time you present your reports to the board and you expect their decisions out of those reports, every time they scrutinize your financial spending, every time they scrutinize the audited statement, they're evaluating you. They are checking to see that, are you making progress? Are you moving the organization forward? Is your leadership growing this organization? Is your leadership ensuring that this organization is impacting on its community? That is what your board should be doing. And your board, if they are involved, they will take that role very seriously. On the third eye, whenever you're looking at your programs and presenting your programs to the board should be able to say, I am worried. For instance, I remember there was a time in my board that they said, look, we need to make sure that, in the focus on not leaving girls behind and all this, gender responsive programming, that you are also not leaving boys behind. We need you to come up with a program proposal, which you will present to us, that shows how you are incorporating boys' needs and challenges also into your gender programs. Gender should not only be strictly focused on girls, because now we're seeing a higher abuse. drug abuse, high school and secondary school levels are beginning to report. We are seeing a high incidence of cybercrime. We're seeing a high incidence of so and so. And it turns out from all the reports that there's a higher prevalence of male participation in these activities than female. So what are you doing in your gender-related programming to also address the needs of boys? It was our board that challenged us. So you see that your board, even when you're presenting your program reports, should be able to give this guidance to say, we are not satisfied with the impact. The impact is narrow, is too narrow, especially vis-a-vis the challenges that are growing in society. You must respond to those challenges adequately by ensuring that your program, the focus of your program is embracing or adequately tackling these emergent challenges in society. So your board is also doing program evaluation without micromanaging you. It is when you present those reports, the board will be making, forming impressions. And when they come for meetings, they'll say, this is my observation. I want management to be able to do so and so. They intend to address this. That way, like I said, the organ is complementing the management, and they are making the overall impact of that organization even better. So these are areas that your board, or areas of evaluation that are happening with your board. At this point in time, I've come to the end of today's presentation. And okay, I was hoping to do it at 12, to end by 12:30. So we have 30 minutes, but this is 12:33. We have the next 27 minutes, so we can go into Q&A.
Can we put our hands together for this wonderful session? You can see that quite a lot has been given. Can we begin to see your hands up? If you have questions, please raise your hand. Okay, I can see a hand.
All right, okay.
Fabian Amadi.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. My name is Fabian Amadi, and I'm thinking about the fear of the board hijacking, if you permit me to use that word, the organization from the founder of ED. Has it ever happened before? And what could have been the legitimate reasons behind it, and how can it be addressed?
Thank you very much. Let's take Benin City.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please, is it safe to not put your name as the executive director and the founder? Is it safe to not put your name among the board members?
All right. Let's take Ikeja. Over to you, Ikeja.
Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Omotoyo Salami. So how can you try to restructure when you have your friends on the executive team? I'm really having issue with that, because I can't say
Okay.
I try to advise people that
that's okay. That's okay. The question is clear.
Do you understand the question, sir?
We do. I met you yesterday. Okay, final question from Ikeja.
So we have 4 questions from here. Okay, good morning. I want to ask, what's your advice to couples, like the facilitator mentioned earlier, what's your advice to them? Should they step down? Should one person step down from one place or just resign, something like that? Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. Actually, my question is on selection. I would like to know if a foreigner can be appointed on the board of trustees, and if such a person, a foreigner, can be made a chairperson of the board. Thank you.
Last question.
Based on board development, based on board development and in view of donor funding, that is why it is necessary. But have you considered the aspect of the regulators? Because with the CAC Act today and the government regulation, emphasis is placed more on the trusteeship in controlling donor funding than just the board. Yes, the donors are interested in the board, but the regulators, that is the government in our instance, are more interested in the activities or what the trustees, whom they know as the people who oversee the company, do. What is your own on that?
Thank you. That's all from Ikeja.
Over to you, Adam.
Okay. So let me start with the first one. I was trying to take notes. Regulator expectations on incorporated trustees. Okay. Board hijacking likely causes, how to avoid. Is it a trend that is common? Now, we are fortunate that quite a number of the things that occur in the for-profit space are not rife in our own space, which is a non-profit space. But not to say that we've not heard reports of, boards usurping the role of management. But this hijack you talk about, the things where all this corporate hijack, where you immediately, there's some sort of strategy to remove a chairperson or remove a company founder, take away shares, all of those things. Remember, your model is different. The times when instances like this occur, usually in membership-based organizations. I distinguish between membership-run organizations and management-run organizations. It is more common for you to hear about all these mutinies, hijacks, or whatever language. It is basically a vote of no confidence on ExCos, where you are running membership-type organizations. So amongst coalitions, for instance, we always have these quarrels. And that's why they say there's a lot of, infighting in the CSO space. People often complain that there's often a lot of infighting and a lot of warring amongst in CSO spaces. Usually these things are common in coalitions that have run on ExCos. We have a national chairman, we have a national coordinator, we have treasurer, we have secretary, we have what are all those offices? Financial secretary. Then you say, they are responsible for coordinating the state chapters. At the end of the day, they will begin to quarrel about the constitution. They will say the election process was fraught with, with this, with that. A lot of things begin to arise, and then the mandate that these coalitions are set up to drive becomes secondary. And usually, it's because of a lot of maybe, sometimes it's personal, these things that fall by personal issues. Egos between people who wanted the position, resources, large resources, and then people are eyeing these resources. These are human failures oftentimes that give birth to this. In traditional structures where there's management and board members of NGOs, what we typically are saddled with is, how do you even get your board to be active? These are the challenges we face. Those who run management structure types of NGOs, where the board is, sitting in governing capacity. You want your board to be more active, more responsive. Your situation is hardly ever that your board wants to take over. Unless there are sometimes cases, and the reports I've heard of such stories is maybe there's a grant that came in, and maybe the board member wanted you to hire somebody he or she knows, because maybe that grant allows you to hire more staff. Then board members begin to try to influence the recruitment process. They will start sending you names. Please hire my this, hire my cousin, hire my that. These are some of the things we tend to see where board members, flout good practices. Or they will say, please use my company or the board members who also have their own personal businesses. They want to supply you this. They want to be the ones to supply you computers. They want to be the ones to, so sometimes they want to breach the finance management or finance procedures of the organization that maybe require you to go and get 3 bids from 3 separate vendors. Then you evaluate best value for money. These are challenges that occur. But not to say that it is not possible for a board to declare a vote of no confidence on the executive director. If you are your audited financial statements constantly show misappropriation of funds, constantly show abuse of office, grant theft, different things. These are grounds for a board to do their job and say, we need to change the executive director. The conflict arises when the executive director is the founder who went and got all the board members. So I think that my concern, if I were in a young organization working with a board, would be how do I engage my board in a way that they can be effective as a form of support without micromanaging the life of the organization. I don't think that you need to be too concerned with issues around hijacking, except you did not compose properly. So maybe if you recruited them properly and they've signed terms of reference, then you won't have cases, for instance, where your board member is taking information about some grants that the organization is pursuing, and the person has set up a new NGO to do the same work that you people are doing, to replicate it, and then be applying for the same grants. These are things that could also occur. But if you pick the right people, if you make sure they sign the right terms, and if you once you're assessing them and you discover these violations, for instance, you discover that a board member set up an NGO and did not disclose to you people the entire board and management structure, that is a ground, for instance, to sever the ties, because there's a deep conflict of interest. So these are things that I can think of that could potentially arise. And the ways I know that are best to mitigate them is to have your documented processes, your terms of reference, your proper orientation, your board manual that tells them, spells out, oh, it is not acceptable for a board to set up their own NGO without disclosing that conflict of, things like that. Second question, should an executive director not be listed amongst the board? I think she said, is it okay if the executive director is a board member? Now, most times, like I said, in our own terrain, when you are the founder and you are submitting the first names of the founding members of the organization, these names of founding members, the CAC recognizes them as what it calls incorporated trustees. So in all likelihood, your name is likely to be amongst, it is very likely that you as the initial founder, your name is amongst those incorporated trustees. However, in the way you now function, if you know that you are an executive, that you are functioning as an executive director, then you can list yourself as the executive secretary, because CSC will ask you, who is the chairperson, who is the secretary? So you can then, since you plan to be on the board as an executive director, you can tell them that you put your name as the executive secretary. That allows you in, normal day-to-day templates to be running the affairs of the organization while the other members are acting in oversight over you. So in that instance, we understand when your name appears amongst the names that are listed on the board, but it is deemed that you are not acting in board capacity. You are merely serving as, you are the link between management reporting to the board. So you are like the secretary. How do you restructure when you have your friends on your board? These are things I've covered already in Monday's session, in this session. Once you identify that the membership of your friends on your board is not healthy for the organization, one of the ways you can do that is maybe you revisit the terms. Like I said, give them a renewal commitment, give them a document that restates the next level of, when you people entered, you were all friends, you were all playing around. Now it's serious business. So you spell out the business, you tell them the obligations they now owe the organization. If they cannot match it, if they can't accept it, they will just, fade out. And then you then begin to invite new people. So I've already covered this. It will basically involve repeating these things that I've stated in the previous sessions. Couples on the board. Is it not right? Or how do you said, should one person step down? Should one person not step down? Like I said, it is common in this part for, a couple to say they want to set up an organization. It happens. What we are saying simply is that your role must never be So for instance, it is not advisable that the wife is the executive director, the husband is the chairman. Those things are not a good practice. The CSC will not put a law. I don't think in CAMA it is ever stated anywhere in CAMA that it is outlawed. But conventionally, it is not good practice because the chairman is the president of the board that oversees the management. When it is your husband or when it is your wife, I am not confident as an external party, as a third party, that you will be doing your work objectively because you are in a marital relationship with this person. So it doesn't connote, it doesn't signal, confidence. It doesn't give off, it doesn't exude something that donors want to see. That's why, yes, two of you can be if your husband happens to be on the board, he can just be a member of the board while there is a presiding chairman who is not him. That is advised, or if two of you are the co-founders and two of you are in management, because sometimes two of you can be in the management structure, two of you can be managing the affairs of the organization. Then a separate set of people should be your board members who are checking you, who are acting in oversight. So that's what I would say. You have to ensure is the rationale, is the principle behind it that you should be watching for. I don't come here to give anybody formulas. I tell you principles, and then you yourself, using critical logic, you'll be able to say, if I put this structure in place, it violates the principle of checks and balances. It violates the principle of separation of powers. It violates the principle of conflict of interest. So my organization is not looking good. So that's how I would say you should approach it. Anytime you or your husband are serving in roles in the organization that could potentially imply that, funds might be, that two of you are the only ones making decision over money. Two of you are the only ones making decision that it could affect the transparency in the manner in which the organization is run, then it's not a healthy arrangement. Please review it. Foreigner on the board or as a chairperson. Like I said, some people like to invite foreigners to be on their board, maybe as a way of attracting global funds, as a way of attracting global partners. But given the reasoning, this organization is serving in the interest of your community. It is expected to represent the profiles of your community. The people that we typically see in your community are the kinds of people we expect to see in your board because they are speaking in the interest, they are defending the interest of the community. If at all you have a chairperson or a member of the board, I don't expect a foreigner to be a member. For me, it's a contradiction in principle. That I'm a Nigerian-based organization and my board chairperson is Ugandan. I don't know anybody who has taken such a thing to CSC, and I don't know what CSC will do about it. But I know people have what they call board of advisors. That is not something they submit to CSC. It's just, you just for your website, for fancy, to make it fancy, to make, to signal to people that you're global mind. They have what they call board of advisors. And depending on new projects that they're taking on, they can invite more and more people to their board of advisors. But for CSC purposes, I don't CSC, because you will have to submit registered address, some of these details about your excos, your board member, your incorporated trustees. I don't know of any scenario, I'm not personally aware of a scenario where somebody has submitted a chairman that is a foreigner to CSC, and I'm curious about how CSC handled it. But if I were CSC, I would reject that application because the community is within our jurisdiction. It's Nigeria where, that it's Nigeria's non-governmental objectives you're pursuing. And the incorporated trustees, if they're supposed to be representatives speaking or protecting the interests of the community, I expect logically that it would be a Nigerian who would, occupy that position, or somebody who is of Nigerian citizenship, right? So, I know that there are people, Nigerians in diaspora, who serve on boards locally, but they are by their name. CSC will not even query it. Maybe it's the name indicates that it's a Nigerian. So these are things you must be watching out for. If the principle is that the member of your board represents the interests of the community, It presupposes that that person is derived from that or understands that community, came out of that community. You have situations where some foreigners have lived in Nigeria and naturalized into Nigeria. That is a different case because they are resident in Nigeria, they have business ongoing concerns in Nigeria. We have some Lebanese who they're more Yoruba than even the average Yoruba person in Ibadan. Such people, I know they exist on boards, they've chaired boards, so that's a different dynamic. But that you're picking somebody that lives in France, is of French nationality, to come and be the chairperson of your board that is pursuing rural women's empowerment in Igboshere. I mean, anybody hearing that, I'm sure it runs contrary. Regulatory expectations about the role of incorporated trustees. As I said, CAC deems it that your incorporated trustees are acting in the interest of the community or the local, society, the local, whether it's your state, whether it's, the country context, wherever the scope of your operations is. The way CAC deems it that they are functioning is that every year CAC says, submit or file your annual returns. Now, when you file those annual returns, they comprise of certain key documents. Your audited financial statements that are signed by an independent auditor with a stamp. Your minutes of meetings that show that your board of these incorporated trustees looked at those documents, looked at your programmatic reports, approved them or adopted the audited financial statements. There are resolutions. You see, your minutes of meetings should tell us the resolutions that were passed. And at the end, those minutes of meetings are signed by the chairman and the executive secretary of that organization. When CAC sees that, CAC believes that the incorporated trustees have performed their role to the organization and to you. CAC is not going to say that the fund you got from donor, this is how you're independent. CAC is very minimalist from what I see. CAC wants to just see those things, to see that you people are having your regular meetings, the meetings that presuppose that checks and balances, are being carried out. CAC does not go into details about, is it your board that helped you get a grant? Or how did your board, supervise the spending of that grant? CAC derives that information through the audited financial statement that a minute of meeting with resolution approving or adopting that audited statement is clearly present, is reflected in. So in terms of your question about how does CAC view the role of incorporated trustees vis-a-vis how donors view the role of your board members, I said it and I've stated it many times. CAC just gives you very minimum benchmarks. In fact, donors put a higher requirement. Donors will ask more detailed questions. Donors will, like I said, some donors will be saying, can I meet with your chairman? CAC has never, not to my knowledge, has never told any organization, bring your board members for a meeting with us so that we can know how well they know what you people are doing. That's not CAC's. CAC doesn't go as far into that as even donors would tend to do. So please just understand what CAC wants and give unto Caesar what Caesar wants. Understand what donors want and render unto donors, onto that particular Caesar what he or she wants. And you're in a better position to clinch donor grants. Because if all you do is just satisfy CAC requirements, it might not earn you some major grants that you are seeking. Donors sometimes want more. Thank you. I think I've answered all the questions.
We now go live to Shogbo, and then we'll come back to American Center.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Well done, Madam Speaker. Now, I want to know, I actually joined this last session. I wasn't part of the former session. I want to know if there's a board that controls the activities of NGO in the country. And that's the first part. The second is, what's your thought on federal government now clamoring to scrutinize the activities of NGO in the country, especially their financial activities? Thank you very much.
Okay, can we, any other person? Yeah, please go forward. Shubo, can you help me with?
Okay, yeah, I want to ask a question now. No, feeding from your pool of experience, a simple question I want to ask. For a startup NGO, what is the average number of board of directors they can begin with for optimal input? For that is just my simple question.
Optimum performance.
For optimal
Thank you.
performance, yeah.
Adam, over to you.
Okay. So to the first question, is there a central board controlling the activities of NGOs in the country? The only agency of government that regulates the activities of nonprofits is the Corporate Affairs Commission, and it uses Section C of CAMA. Now, there are many like coalitions, different across regions. You have, depending on your area, sometimes under education, you have coalitions for organizations, so civil society, actors for education for all. If you're in water, if you're in WASH program, you have those. Depending on your humanitarian sector, you have different groups that also try to condense its, CSO actors into one given space. But a central board, I'm not aware that we have one. There's been a clamor. I remember there was a time there was a move by the government to try to introduce some higher regulatory requirements for NGOs to disclose their grants, the number of their grants, NGOs to gain approvals before being able to receive grants. But there was a pushback by civil society that this is a way to check, that this is a way that governments, essentially dictatorial governments, basically minimize the impact of civil society on governing spaces, and you shrink, the civic space. So there was a pushback, especially because they felt that those measures were targeted at organizations working on democratic goals, governance, issues of governance and things like that. However, I feel that we're ripe to have, I wouldn't call them regulatory boards, but boards, that essentially guide nonprofits. For instance, you want to start one, you're in a certain phase of the growth of your organization, you should be able to walk into some office that can, like serve as a bureau for nonprofits that provides resources, connections, collaborations, a network. So you know who is working on this work in this area, in Jigawa, what number of NGOs. So not just a database, but some central working unit that provides this valuable service. But we don't have that. As far as I know, CSC is strictly the only regulatory body that is responsible for us. And all they do, as I said, is make sure that, we submit our returns. Those are the ways that they're able to see whether we still exist, and ostensibly whether we are functioning in our mandates. But even that, I doubt if they scrutinize it in detail. What number of members is ideal for optimal performance? I've said this. I will never propose a formula. I told you this was the week prior to this week, the first week. I said the complexity, you have to be guided. There's no way I will tell you need 3 people. I would need to look at your strategic plan. I would need to look at your initial document. You see, if you introduce your NGO to me, I can't just say because you are 2 years old, then you should only have 3 people. No, it is number one, what mission you are driving, the objectives behind that mission, and the programmatic. So you have a certain theory of change to tackling a certain problem in your community. That theory of change means that you are making these sets of inputs, expecting these sets of, intermediary and final outcomes. Now, those inputs come in the form of programs. You might decide you are going to run 5 programs, and those 5 programs require you to operate a budget of 25 million in the first year alone. And the units or the structures of the organization that can give effect to those 5 programs would mean that you need to have programs unit, you need to have communications unit, you need to have an administrative department, you need to have what do you call it, HR department. You need to have finance and accounting. By the time I start seeing the complexity of your structure, you're also telling me that even in the first year of my operations, I'm going to have to function in 2 states. That kind of thing, if I see it's the complexity of what you set out to do in the first few years of your existence that will guide me to say, I advise you that you have these kinds of people in your board. You should have a set of people on your board that can guide you on legal matters. You should have somebody on your board that brings in experience and expertise on maybe your area is public health, or maybe your area is women's financial, blah, blah, blah. Literacy and inclusion, or maybe your area is WASH. I would say that you should have a subject matter expert in this, whatever it is the area that you are functioning in. I would say that given that even as you are starting with such a large administrative portfolio, you should also have somebody who can guide you on administrative matters. How to, what policies should shape your first, your staff, guide your staff operations. What policies should guide your recruitment activities? What policies, so it is the complexity you embrace when you are starting that will define how many people, or not, it's not even, you even start out with numbers, you start out with diversity. That is, what kind of people do I need? It is that question, what kind of people that will now tell you this number, this kind of people, there are 5 in total that I need. That is what will tell you how many you must start out with. I hope that helps. But if you say, because I'm just year 2, then I'm only going to do, I'm just in my first year, I will only start with two incorporated trustees. What if in your first year, you are starting with a grant the size of $40,000 US, and that grant is supposed to deliver a certain project? That means you are different from the same a different organization that is in its first year, but is starting with 500,000 naira, is doing only one, is piloting only one program in its community. And you understand, is basically focused on just one narrow area. You are very different. So don't use the years or how young you are to define who joins your board. Use that is the blueprint that you've designed in your strategic plan. What we hope to do in the first 2 years or 3 years, how many programs we're flagging off or piloting. Those things and what administrative structure is going to be the backbone to support those programmings. Are we starting out in an office with 10 staff? And these staff are divided into 5 departments: monitoring and evaluation department, research department, department. You see that you are very different from another organization that says it wants to go and do meaning what number is ideal. And beyond just number, what diversity? What kind of people should be on your board? You can have 5 people who are all lawyers, and yet you are not pursuing, you're not an organization that is trying to expand legal access to legal aid to people. So why do you have just people of the same professional background in your, so it's not just the number, it's the diversity as well that you must consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. We are going to wrap up now. Even though I've seen 2 hands up. Adam, can you still take 2 more?
Sure, yes, sir.
All right. So after these 2, we cut the final, the show. Senator Labode, and then Moses. Please unmute yourself.
This is also
Sorry, you are not audible enough. Moses, please, can you go ahead? Please, can you log out and log in again? Moses.
Yes, can I speak now?
Yes. Go ahead, please. Moses, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. All right. I have a question here. If a member of the board relocates from Nigeria, can he still remain a member?
Yes, of course. In today's world of technology, I mean, the most important thing is, can he serve? Is he able to serve? And if he's able to join your meetings virtually, if he's able to scrutinize your documents and be part of the resolutions that are being passed, if he's able to support you in fundraising, in fact, that becomes an advantage because he's a link to another economy which might be stronger than your local economy. So he might support your fundraising goals even better. So if relocation does not mean that he's incommunicado and you're unable, he can't participate, then you have no problem. Today's world has proven that geographical, where you are geographically is not a determinant of what you can participate in. You can work on jobs remotely in other countries. Similarly, your Nigerian board member who is outside the country can effectively support, your role as your organization as a board member.
Hello.
Hello, Moses, go ahead. All right, I think we have to call it a day at this point. Let me inform us that this workshop is still continuing with another speaker on Monday. Shubo, please, you will come up on the other screen. Please announce to people the plan that we have from next week. And then on Friday next week, we have a conversation with an alum where we're talking to African farmer Mogaji. We'll be exploring opportunities for farmers. Anyone who is interested in farming, this is a guy you need to listen to. He went to the US and he has come and he has implemented so many things and is ready. Shuba, are you ready? Okay, please go right.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Trust you enjoyed Mrs. Adams' class. I was personally blessed, and I'm here at the U.S. Consulate General. The attendance has been really, really encouraging. Okay, let me start from the programming of the workshop. Of course, if you've been following on with the programming, you would receive an email, and that email should contain a message that should direct you to joining a WhatsApp group. On joining the WhatsApp group, every information you would need would be provided on that platform. You can ask your questions by contacting any of the admin on the group. That being said, the next course, so the course for board development ends today. It ends today. You will be getting the recordings for both sessions, the one on Monday and the one for today. And you also be getting the recording for the last class of strategic planning. That being said, the next class is what has been tagged faith-based leadership. Faith-based leadership. It's going to start on Monday, August and the 15th, and will end next week also, August the 18th, 2022. So that is all for that for now. So whatever information you would need, whatever questions or concerns, you can always direct it through the WhatsApp platform. That's all for me for today. Bye-bye now.
All right, thank you very much. So we want to appreciate you, Dr. Edem Osai. Am I saying the correct?
I didn't get you, sir. If you were asking me a question, I lost the last
I
part.
said, Dr. Edem Osai, are you a doctor?
No, not yet.
In the making, okay.
In the making.
I believe that we've all benefited a lot from this session. I hope we'll be able to apply what we've learned. And we want to thank all our directors for making this happen. I am so amazed that many of us were on this call. So thank you very much. Edem, we're very, very grateful. Please let's put our hands together again for her for a nice job.
A pleasure,
well done.
sir.
Thank you,
Absolute
thank you.
pleasure.
So to everybody, let's meet on Monday and let's have a wonderful time again. Faith-based leadership development. So if you are running a faith-based organization, this is an opportunity. Please invite someone. Okay, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye to everybody. Bye.